Shenmue is a superlative example of a great yet terrible game, but I consider it the most unique open world game I've ever played because of its outstanding attention to detail in its simulation of the real life city of Yokosuka that over 20 years later still manages to represent the potential the medium of video games could achieve. But sadly, this great sword is a double-edged one, because in representing these vibrant and vicarious possibilities that one would want in an open world, it oddly kept many of the unwarranted banalities of everyday life that most would despise venturing through. For these reasons, I honestly like the game just barely enough to recommend that you play it at least once. I was happy I played it, but even happier I'll never play it again. I can't even tell you how many times this game crashed on me while I was at the end of a workday at the pier when you can't save your progress, to only have to do it all over again. I was being kind in that review. Too kind. Anyway, although playing Shenmue made me feel like I was wasting my life away just to get to the next cutscene, I decided to do something I thought I would honestly regret. I gave this series a second chance, and I have to say, maybe I'm embellishing it just a tad bit, but Shenmue 2 is maybe one of the greatest video game sequels of all time. Maybe.
What does he mean?
What do I mean by that? Well, what I tried to mean by that is Shenmue 2 does everything a sequel should do. Not the best game. Definitely better games in the world with a 2 on them. Uncharted 2, Mass Effect 2, Blinks the Cat 2.
Stall for time. Go on. Only you can fight the battle at the ruins of time.
Definitely better games. All of them. But what I think makes it a sequel of such significance is how it took such a raw, unrefined predecessor that many rightfully might not have had the nerve to sit through, and distills that formula to a level that I believe is the best of its ability. And then on top of that, expands it to the size that I didn't even think could be processed during that generation of hardware. It is clear that a lot of heart was put into making this a special experience, and I want to explain why it's a fantastic game for newcomers and maybe, just maybe, redeemable for people who didn't finish the first entry. First things first, many of the issues that plagued Shenmue 1 were expunged, and many of the standout ideas that redeemed the experience were expanded upon. Useless forklift driving, which reminded me of the banality of everyday life? Gone. Well, not the reminder of the banality of everyday life. Larger game world to explore? Hallelujah. Lack of ability to speed up time when an activity is time sensitive? Get the out of here. Improved pacing? Yes sirree. More well-written story and characters? Oh hell yeah. The story continues our journey with the protagonist of the Shenmue series, Ryo Hazuki, and his noble steed Toto. And you're not in Yokosuka anymore. He travels to Hong Kong to continue his investigation into finding and killing Lan Di, the man who mansplained Ryo's father to death. After leaving the boat, Ryo almost immediately learns of the heartless and callous streets of Hong Kong.
Watch out! Here in Hong Kong, you can easily get run over!
There, that's where he learns it. And boy does it show. My god, the horror of this place.
Welcome!
I no longer feel like I am in the pleasantly placid suburban streets of Japan. Ryo has gone from being homely in his hometown to a stranger in a strange one, which is important and improves the story. No longer can Ryo survive by just acting in the same childish mindset as he had when he was a somewhat recognized figure in Yokosuka. Now he must adapt to his new life or risk failing his mission. He must learn when to play nice with people, especially those he is at the mercy of. And through these interactions with new characters, we see Ryo actually seem to accept the help of others rather than keeping his stance of a desolate loner that does everything himself. In Shenmue 1, it seemed like every single side character seemed one-dimensional. The benefit of the sequel's characters is we get to see how these characters initially meet and form bonds with Ryo, rather than just being thrusted into the world. They also seem to have more of their own motives for helping Ryo. So these characters seem to have more, well, character. Ryo's sensei Shuing is helping Ryo because she doesn't want him going down the same road as a family member of hers, because she knows the end result will be self-destructive. Her voice acting is also terrible. I mean, it sounds like the actress is putting herself to sleep while reading the script. It's really bad.
Why don't you worry about your kung fu instead?
Through the orphan child Fang Mei, we are given a glimpse of Ryo's lighter side. And my god, is their relationship absolutely adorable, but unfortunately very easy to miss. And through Joy, we still see that Ryo has no idea how to talk to women around his own age.
You're such a bitch.
Ryo is a very flawed character. His stern, naive, and impetuous nature can be perceived very poorly by the player. While there is room for him to improve on his own, I still felt that he's not a character that can really carry the series on his sailor-searching shoulders alone. In this regard, he holds quite a few similarities to Assassin's Creed 3's central protagonist Connor Kenway, or I can't pronounce that, who many considered to be the worst protagonist in the series. For the sequel, instead of forcing a dramatic shift of the character to make him more empathetic to the player, they instead decided to introduce a new character to nudge him in the right direction. There are plenty of unlikely alliances throughout history: Stalin and Roosevelt, Mark Antony and Octavian Caesar, the Rock and Sock connection. Here we have Ryo and Ren of Heavens. Ren is a very integral character because of how he psychologically forces Ryo to come to grips with the fact that not only must he accept help, but accept it from those that he would normally be adamant about dealing with. The leader of the notorious Heavens gang seems like one that is entirely motivated by his own self-interest and with ease would betray others at the sound of a nickel hitting the floor. He adds an entirely new dynamic to the plot through the dichotomy between him and our main character Ryo, which I must say was pulled off brilliantly. Ryo with his stick-up-his-ass persona is a perfect match with someone as self-indulgent and carefree as the pompous Ren, but they develop a bond. In fact, I felt the relationship was so developed, so deserving, and so fun to watch, that the time I saw them give each other a high five, I couldn't help but smile with glee. Ryo is forced to be more calm by continuously having his patience tested throughout many of their interactions, and in turn, Ryo forces Ren to accept that he can't just get whatever he wants from people that he feels contempt for, and may actually come to respect them. This relationship is the rose that the game needed to bloom the most in order to work. But we play open world games, not just for characters, but also the places that encompass us. Ryo's move from the land of the rising sun to the land of the pork buns is phenomenal. Hong Kong gives the impression of a colorful, textured, bustling metropolis that brings welcome changes of scenery as well as pace. What I really found most intriguing was that while the expansive sequel is multiple times the size of Yokosuka, I never once found that it compromised the fastidious level of detail that is so deeply rooted in the original. Whether stores are opening with the rising of the sun, or if the moon and the campfire are my only means of sight while in the woods, I was always given the impression of a world that was enriched with life. What's even crazier is this game is probably older than most of the people that are watching this video. Not only that, but the locations here are better integrated than in 1. In Yokosuka, I didn't feel like every location was being utilized to its fullest, for the reason that you spent most of your time in the 2 locations of Dobuita and the harbor area. Whereas in these new locations, it felt like every single area had something new to behold, which I feel makes it better than Grand Theft Auto 5 in this regard. Because even though the San Andreas map was huge, I spent most of my time in this small sector of Los Santos, which made me feel like so much space and hard work was wasted. Meanwhile in Hong Kong, whether it's the pier or the shopping mall district or the town center, I always felt like each area carried details unique to its own. I can't remember the name of any of these locations for the life of me because I can't read, but I always felt like I knew where I was going, due to each location's distinctness. But what gives life to games like this is not the buildings, but the people that live in them. The pedestrians still have their daily routines of where they work and walk, which gives the impression of people that aren't straying too far from reality. And yes, yes, you can still interact with every single one of them, but they are more useful this time around, for if you speak to someone walking around the district and ask for directions, they might actually accompany you to your destination. Now, only if they would move faster! Unlike the first game, there is no forklift simulator here, though you still do have to pick up crates, but this time you use your hands. While the forklift job had a charm to it, this does not. It's horrendously implemented. You have no control of Ryo's movements and are just following these repetitive button prompts that the guy that you're working with shouts in your ear constantly. Shenmue is famous for integrating QTEs that feel satisfying and rewarding, but this just feels like an atrocity where you just listen to a guy who talks like the hippo from Agretzko screaming left, 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 or right, 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 right. And yeah, I'm being serious about that.
Left, left, left!
By the way that he's having you carry the crate, it's almost like you're walking through a f***ing landmine. And for the love of God, do not drop this stupid crate, or you'll unleash the wrath of a demon.
Push the number of times that I tell you!
If there's any solace to this, it's that it's an optional activity to make money after the first time you do it. Oh, and for your information, Hong Kong isn't the only place you'll visit. You actually have more locations you arrive to that all feel distinct. I did not expect that, and I did not expect how large or how many hours I would be spending there. But that's not a bad thing. It didn't feel too long. It was just a surprise.
But a welcome one.
Now here is where you'll really have to decide if this is a game you could handle. If you couldn't bear the question simulator mechanic of 1, you'll find no alleviation here. There still is a lot of walking, there still is a lot of talking. And yes, everyone still sounds like human piñatas stuffed with quaaludes.
You've covered the ground with leaves, I will tell you about the voodoo.
Joy,
What?
how do I get there?
I can't tell you that.
Huh?
If you go there, you might never come back.
Joy,
I won't stop you. I know it's no use. But
Joy,
I don't want to help you get into trouble. Don't make me do that. Just go.
Joy, you...
And yes, it's still sounding gloriously terrible.
Shut up or I'll bust your face!
But there is a definite improvement in pacing due to the expunging of events that are sensitive to time of day. This means that you'll get into more fantastic fighting and QTEs, which pretty much remain the same from the original. But I will say that the camera for combat really has issues when you are in narrow areas. I mean, I don't even know what the hell is even happening here. Just like in the last game, Shenmue 2 is at its best during its final hours. I have not felt such exhilaration from a single player experience in a long time. I didn't know exactly what would be waiting for me behind every corner on every floor, whether it was a clueless guard, a nutcase with a chainsaw, a running Snorlax, or whatever was obstructing me from my ascension up a building. Though I will say they could have placed less of those annoying QuickTime cutscenes around almost every corner of the first few floors. Even after the climax of the game, you are given well-deserved time to wind down for the final moments. This truly is a great ending. It has its own story while still leaving enough mystery for the next installment. Shenmue 2 does much of what 1 couldn't. It made Ryo seem like he grew as a person. He felt like he was more trusting of others or more willing to express himself, especially to a stranger he meets late in the game. This is how you do a sequel. Even if you don't like it, which is highly possible, it knows what it is, and it does it absolutely superbly. It's almost perfectly refined in its implementation, though the playability of the experience really depends on you and your level of patience. I have that patience. I know that for a fact because I got every one of those stupid shit animals from Metal Gear Solid 5. God, I hate myself. So if you can stand a very zen style of game, this is something I would recommend trying out. If you don't think you have that temperament, it probably won't be for you. But for people like me, this gets a 4 out of 5. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you give it a like or maybe even subscribe. Thanks again.
"瞳は